A racist car dealership manager kicks out black man, unaware he is the new owner of the dealership. What you're about to witness will shake you to your core. A moment where prejudice meets justice, where assumptions crumble like a house of cards, and where one man's deep-seated arrogance becomes the very instrument of his complete and utter downfall. Get your hands off me! Do you have any idea who I am? I'm the general manager of this dealership. This is my workplace. You can't do this to me. Sir, you're under arrest for assault and battery, racial discrimination, and creating a public disturbance. You have the right to remain silent. But to understand how Marcus Thompson, a supposedly successful car dealership manager with 15 years of experience and a reputation for running a tight ship, ended up face down in handcuffs on the pristine showroom floor he thought he controlled with an iron fist, we need to rewind the clock. We need to go back exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes. Back to the moment when a quiet, unassuming man in well-worn jeans and a faded jacket pushed through those gleaming glass doors, carrying with him a secret so powerful it would shatter Marcus's world and change the lives of everyone in that building forever. This is a story about assumptions. About the masks we wear and the truths we hide. About how prejudice blinds us to reality, and how justice, when it finally arrives, can be as swift and merciless as a hurricane. Before we dive into the story, tell us, what city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. We love hearing from our global family. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep this storytelling journey alive. Your support truly keeps us going. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Meet David Williams, though nobody in that showroom knew his name yet. At 52 years old, David possessed the kind of face that blended seamlessly into any crowd, weathered but kind, with intelligent brown eyes that had seen both struggle and triumph. His clothes told a story of humility, well-worn Levi's that had been washed 1,000 times, a plain black t-shirt that could have come from any department store, and white sneakers that had walked countless miles. His watch was a simple Timex, not a Rolex. His wallet, visible in his back pocket, was made of worn leather, not Italian calfskin. Everything about his appearance whispered, "Ordinary working man," to those who judged books by their covers. But David Williams was anything but ordinary. His story began 27 years earlier in the grittiest part of Detroit, where crack houses outnumbered decent homes and hope was as rare as clean air. At 17, David was a high school dropout, not by choice but by necessity. His mother, Sarah Williams, had been diagnosed with lupus, and the medical bills were drowning their small family. David's father had vanished when David was 12, leaving nothing behind but empty beer bottles and unpaid debts. So David worked. He worked at a gas station from 4 a.m. to noon, then rushed to a warehouse job from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m., and finally spent his nights cleaning office buildings until 2 a.m. 4 hours of sleep, 7 days a week, for 3 years straight. Also, his mother could afford her medication, and they could keep their tiny apartment. But David had dreams bigger than his circumstances. While other teenagers were playing video games, he was studying business books from the library. While they slept in on weekends, he was taking night classes at the community college, paying for each credit hour with tips from his cleaning job. His notebooks were filled with business plans sketched during lunch breaks, strategies developed while mopping floors at 1 a.m. The turning point came when David was 23. His mother's condition had stabilized, and David had saved enough money to make his first business move. Not a restaurant or a shop, those required too much capital. Instead, David bought his first car from a bankruptcy auction, a 1987 Honda Civic with 200,000 miles and more problems than a soap opera. He spent 3 weeks and his last $800 fixing it up, then sold it for a $1,200 profit. That first sale became 2 cars. 2 became 5. 5 became a small lot behind a friend's garage. David learned every aspect of the business from the ground up: how to spot a good deal at auction, how to negotiate with suppliers, how to read people's needs and match them with the right vehicle. More importantly, he learned how it felt to be dismissed, talked down to, and treated as less than human by salespeople who judged him by his age, his clothes, and his zip code. By 30, David owned 3 small used car lots. By 35, he had opened his first new car dealership. By 40, Williams Automotive Group was expanding across state lines. Now, at 52, David controlled 47 dealerships across 6 states, employed over 2,400 people, and generated annual revenues exceeding $800 million. He had offices in Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta, and Dallas, each one a testament to what determination could accomplish. Yet success had never changed David's core values. He still lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in the same Detroit neighborhood where he'd grown up, now gentrified but still home. He still drove his 2015 Honda Civic on weekends, claiming it reminded him of that first car that started everything. He still preferred corner diners to 5-star restaurants, still wore simple clothes when he wasn't in business meetings, and still remembered every slight, every dismissive look, every time someone had treated him as if he didn't belong. Today, David was making one of his routine inspection visits, though his employees didn't know that's what they were called. Every month, David would visit one of his dealerships unannounced and incognito, observing how his staff treated regular customers. It was his way of ensuring that the values he'd built his company on, respect, dignity, fairness, were being maintained at ground level. Premier Motors was his newest acquisition, purchased just 14 days ago for $12.3 million. The deal had been handled entirely through lawyers and corporate representatives, while the existing management was told only that new ownership would be taking over gradually. David wanted to see how his new employees operated without the artificial politeness that came when the boss was watching. On the other side of this unfolding drama stood Marcus Thompson, and if David represented the best of what ambition could create, Marcus embodied its darker potential. At 43, Marcus had worked in automotive sales for 15 years, climbing from a nervous rookie to the general manager of one of the city's most prestigious dealerships. He was tall, well-groomed, and possessed the kind of confident smile that could close deals and charm customers when he wanted to. Marcus had grown up middle class in the suburbs, the son of a bank manager and a teacher. He'd never known real hardship, never worried about where his next meal would come from, never had to choose between medication and rent. His path to success had been relatively smooth: decent grades, college degree, entry-level sales position, steady promotions. Success had come easily enough that Marcus had begun to believe he deserved it more than others. Somewhere along the way, Marcus had developed a toxic worldview. He'd convinced himself that he could determine a person's worth, their buying power, their seriousness, as a customer, within 30 seconds of meeting them. Expensive suit meant serious buyer. Luxury watch meant real money. Designer handbag meant qualified purchaser. Everyone else was just wasting his valuable time. Marcus prided himself on running what he called a discerning establishment. He trained his sales staff to identify quality prospects immediately and focused their energy accordingly. The unspoken rule was brutally simple: make the right people feel like royalty, and encourage the wrong people to shop elsewhere. It was discrimination disguised as business efficiency, and Marcus had convinced himself it was just smart salesmanship. What Marcus didn't realize was that his prejudices had cost Premier Motors hundreds of thousands in lost sales over the years. Customers he'd dismissed had taken their business elsewhere, often purchasing vehicles far more expensive than anything Marcus would have believed they could afford. His staff lived in fear of his judgment, walking on eggshells and second-guessing their instincts about people. Several talented salespeople had quit rather than participate in Marcus's discriminatory practices. But Marcus saw none of this. In his mind, he was protecting the dealership's reputation, maintaining standards, keeping out the riffraff. He'd never connected his attitudes to the dealership's declining performance over the past 2 years, never wondered why their customer satisfaction scores lagged behind competitors, never questioned why staff turnover was so high. Today, all of Marcus's prejudices, all of his assumptions, all of his arrogance would collide with reality in the most devastating way possible. Premier Motors occupied a prime corner location in Riverside Heights, the city's most affluent commercial district. The building itself was a monument to automotive luxury, soaring glass walls that reached 3 stories high, polished marble floors that reflected the gleaming vehicles like mirrors, and crystal chandeliers that cast rainbow patterns across chrome and leather. The showroom displayed only the finest vehicles: BMW M Series, Mercedes AMG models, Audi RS line, and a few select exotic cars that served more as jewelry than transportation. Everything about the space screamed exclusivity, from the Italian leather furniture in the customer lounge to the complimentary Starbucks station managed by a full-time barista. Classical music played softly through hidden speakers, and the air carried the subtle scent of expensive car leather and fresh flowers. It was the kind of place designed to make certain people feel very welcome and others feel very much like intruders. At exactly 2:17 p.m. on this particular Tuesday afternoon, David Williams pushed through the heavy glass doors. The showroom's climate-controlled environment enveloped him, immediately cool, clean air scented with that distinctive new car smell that every automotive professional knew was actually manufactured and sprayed throughout the building. But along with the artificial atmosphere came something else, something David recognized from years of experiencing it firsthand: the almost imperceptible shift in energy that occurs when someone enters a space where they're perceived as not belonging. David had barely taken 5 steps onto the marble floor when the whispers began. Behind the curved reception desk, a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair nudged her colleague, a brunette in a designer blazer. Both women looked David up and down with the kind of assessment that happens in luxury retail environments: quick, professional, and brutally judgmental. Near the gleaming BMW display, 2 men in expensive suits paused their conversation to glance over. One wore a Rolex that caught the light as he pointed discreetly in David's direction. The other, a silver-haired man in his 60s, shook his head almost imperceptibly, the kind of gesture that said, "Not our type of customer," without words. David felt their eyes tracking his movement across the showroom floor. He'd experienced this countless times over the years: the silent evaluation, the quick categorization, the dismissal. But today, he had a unique opportunity to see how his new employees handled these situations. He approached a stunning silver sedan positioned in the center of the showroom, a BMW 750i with every available option. The window sticker read $98,750, but David knew the actual transaction price would be closer to $110,000 with taxes and fees. He ran his hand along the hood, admiring the flawless paint job and the precision of the German engineering. The craftsmanship was exceptional, exactly the level of quality he expected from dealerships in his network. "Excuse me, sir?" David turned to find Marcus Thompson approaching from across the showroom. Marcus wore a perfectly tailored navy blue suit that probably cost more than many people earned in a month. His tie was silk, his shoes were Italian leather, and his smile was as polished as the vehicles surrounding them. But David, with years of experience reading people, could see past the professional facade to the calculation happening behind Marcus's eyes. Marcus was performing what David recognized as a customer qualification walk, the practiced approach that experienced salespeople use to determine whether someone was worth their time. Marcus's trained gaze was taking inventory: David's faded jeans, his simple t-shirt, his worn sneakers, the absence of expensive jewelry or accessories. David could practically see Marcus's mental calculator adding up these visual cues and reaching an unfavorable conclusion. "That's certainly a beautiful vehicle," Marcus said, his tone carrying that particular quality that suggested David was admiring something far beyond his financial reach. "Are you perhaps here for our service department? The service entrance is around the back of the building, much more convenient for pickups and drop-offs." It was a masterful dismissal, wrapped in helpful politeness. Marcus had just suggested that David couldn't possibly be a customer, that he must be here for the blue-collar service department, and that he should leave the showroom immediately. All delivered with a professional smile. David smiled back, equally polite. "Actually, I'm interested in purchasing a vehicle." The word "purchasing" seemed to hang in the air between them. Marcus's eyebrows raised in a way that suggested surprise, though his professional training prevented outright skepticism. His eyes performed another quick assessment of David's appearance, as if double-checking his initial evaluation. Purchasing, Marcus repeated, letting a note of uncertainty creep into his voice. Well, this particular model is our top-of-the-line 750i. It starts at just under $99,000. With the premium package and options, plus taxes, licensing, and fees, you're looking at approximately $112,000 out the door. David nodded thoughtfully, running his hand along the car's side mirror. That seems reasonable for this level of engineering and luxury. Marcus's confident expression flickered. This wasn't following the script he'd expected. In his experience, when he quoted prices this high to people who didn't look the part, they typically mumbled something about thinking it over and headed quickly for the exit. But David seemed genuinely interested, even comfortable with the numbers. Sir, I have to ask, do you have financing pre-approved through a bank or credit union? Because our lending requirements are quite extensive. We typically require credit scores above 740, verified income documentation, significant down payments, and a debt-to-income ratio below 30%. Each requirement was delivered with increasing emphasis, as if Marcus was building a wall of obstacles designed to discourage David from proceeding. It was psychological warfare disguised as standard business practice. David's response was simple and devastating. I was thinking of paying cash. The words, paying cash, hit Marcus like a physical blow. A snort of laughter escaped him before he could stop it, loud enough that several other people in the showroom turned to look. The blonde receptionist giggled behind her hand. One of the suited men near the BMW display shook his head in apparent amusement. Cash? Marcus repeated, his professional mask slipping enough to reveal genuine disbelief. Sir, we're not talking about a used Honda Civic here. This is a luxury vehicle worth over $100,000. That's not the kind of money most people have sitting in their checking account. David's expression remained perfectly calm, but something subtle shifted in his posture, a straightening of his shoulders, a slight tilt of his head that suggested Marcus was treading on dangerous ground. I understand the amount, Mr. Thompson. Marcus Thompson, General Manager. Marcus emphasized his title like a badge of authority, puffing out his chest slightly. In his mind, the title gave weight to his dismissive attitude, justified his skepticism. Mr. Thompson, I'd appreciate being treated like any other potential customer who walks into your showroom. But Marcus was past the point of standard customer service. He made his assessment, reached his conclusion, and now he was committed to it. In his experience, people who looked like David, casual clothes, modest appearance, no obvious displays of wealth, fell into one of two categories. They were either delusional about their financial capacity, or they were running some kind of scam. Either way, Marcus wanted them gone. Look, sir, Marcus said, his tone becoming more condescending with each word. I'm trying to save us both some time here. This is a luxury dealership. Our typical customers are professionals, doctors, lawyers, business executives. People with established financial backgrounds. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at one of the used car dealerships down on Commerce Street? They have some very nice pre-owned vehicles that might be more in your price range. The euphemisms were paper-thin. Marcus had just told David, in polite business language, that he didn't belong here, that his kind weren't welcome, that he should take his business elsewhere. The showroom had grown noticeably quieter, other conversations pausing as people sensed the tension building. David noticed a young salesman near the back of the showroom, a man in his 20s with an uncomfortable expression. Unlike the others, this employee seemed to recognize the situation for what it was: discrimination in action. The young man took a step forward as if to intervene, then hesitated, clearly aware that challenging Marcus could cost him his job. Mr. Thompson, David said quietly, his voice carrying a new edge of steel. I think you're making assumptions about me based on how I'm dressed and what I look like. That's not good business practice, and it's certainly not appropriate customer service. The direct challenge hit Marcus like a slap. Being called out publicly, in front of his staff and customers, touched every insecurity he carried about his authority and competence. His face flushed red, partly from embarrassment and partly from anger. Sir, I've been in this business for 15 years. I have a college degree in business administration and specialized training in customer relations. I know how to read people. I know how to identify serious buyers versus people who are just wasting everyone's time. And how exactly do you read people, Mr. Thompson? The question was simple, but it demanded an answer that Marcus couldn't give honestly without revealing his prejudices. He gestured vaguely at David's attire, searching for a way to articulate his discriminatory assumptions without sounding overtly racist or classist. Experience. Professional judgment. You learn to recognize the signs of serious financial capacity. What signs would those be? Marcus was trapped now, forced to either back down or double down on his discriminatory behavior. Unfortunately for everyone involved, Marcus chose to dig deeper. Look, let me be completely frank with you, Marcus said, his voice rising enough that conversations throughout the showroom stopped entirely. This is a luxury establishment. Our clientele expects a certain level of sophistication, a certain atmosphere. I can't have people wandering around who clearly don't belong here, making our legitimate customers uncomfortable. The words landed like bombs in the suddenly silent showroom. Several customers pulled out their phones, recognizing that they were witnessing something significant. The young salesman David had noticed earlier stepped forward again. Marcus, maybe we should. Stay out of this, Jenkins! Marcus snapped, spinning around to glare at the younger man. I'm handling this situation, and I don't need advice from someone who's been here 6 months. Jenkins stepped back, but his expression showed clearly that he knew Marcus was making a terrible mistake. Other staff members exchanged worried glances. Even the customers who had initially seemed amused by the situation now looked uncomfortable. David remained perfectly still, but when he spoke, his voice carried unmistakable authority. Mr. Thompson, I strongly advise you to reconsider your approach here. Think very carefully about what you're doing and saying. Are you threatening me? Marcus's voice cracked slightly, betraying his nervousness despite his aggressive posture. Because if you are, I can call security. Or the police. I have every right to refuse service to anyone who makes threats or causes disturbances. I'm not threatening anyone, Mr. Thompson. I'm simply suggesting that you might want to think about how this situation looks. How it sounds. How it's being recorded. Marcus glanced around the showroom and saw at least 6 different phones pointed in his direction. Social media had turned every public interaction into potential viral content, and Marcus was dimly aware that his behavior could end up online. But instead of moderating his approach, the presence of cameras seemed to make him more defensive. You know what your problem is? Marcus stepped closer to David, invading his personal space in a clear attempt at intimidation. You people think you can walk into any establishment, demand respect you haven't earned, and then cry discrimination when reality hits. Well, this is reality. This is business. And I don't have time for games. The phrase, you people, hung in the air like toxic smoke. Every person in the showroom understood the implications, the coded language that Marcus thought was subtle but was actually as obvious as a neon sign. David's expression hardened, but his voice remained calm. What exactly do you mean by you people, Mr. Thompson? Marcus had crossed a line that he couldn't uncross, spoken words that revealed the ugly truth beneath his professional facade. But instead of recognizing his mistake, instead of apologizing and trying to salvage the situation, adrenaline and wounded pride drove him forward. Don't play dumb with me. You know exactly what I mean. Coming in here with your act, wasting my time, playing games about buying cars you obviously can't afford. Acting like you deserve the same treatment as customers who actually have money. I've seen this routine 100 times. David took a deep breath, his composure remarkable given the circumstances. Mr. Thompson, I'm going to give you one last opportunity to apologize, treat me with basic human dignity, and handle this situation professionally. Or what? Marcus sneered, his mask of professionalism completely abandoned now. You'll what, sue me? Write a bad Yelp review? File a complaint with the Better Business Bureau? News flash, buddy, nobody cares what people like you think. Your opinion doesn't matter here. The showroom was completely silent now, even the background music seeming to have stopped. David's calm facade finally showed cracks, not with anger but with profound disappointment in human nature. I tried to give you multiple opportunities to do the right thing, David said quietly. You've made your choice clear. Marcus interpreted the quiet response as defeat, as acknowledgement that David knew he was outmatched. Fatal mistake. That's right. Now you're getting the message. Know your place and move along. Security! But instead of leaving, David reached into his back pocket for his phone. Before your security arrives, David said calmly, pulling out his iPhone. I think there's something you should know about me. Marcus watched suspiciously as David scrolled through his contacts. What are you doing? If you're calling some activist group or local news station, it won't help. I have every right to refuse service, and I have security cameras that will show you were the one causing problems. David ignored the bluster and placed the call, putting it on speakerphone so everyone in the showroom could hear. After 2 rings, a professional female voice answered. Williams Automotive Group Corporate Headquarters, Jennifer speaking. How may I help you? Marcus's confident expression flickered slightly. Williams Automotive Group. The name was familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. Several staff members exchanged glances, recognition dawning in their faces. Jennifer, this is David Williams. Could you please connect me with our legal department? It's somewhat urgent. Of course, Mr. Williams. One moment, please. The phone rang twice more before another voice answered. Williams Automotive Group Legal Department, Sarah Chin speaking. Sarah, it's David. I need you to pull the acquisition paperwork for Premier Motors. The deal that closed 2 weeks ago. Marcus felt his knees go weak. Premier Motors. 2 weeks ago. The sale that had gone through while he was on vacation, the transition that was supposed to happen gradually, the new ownership that he'd been told he would meet. In due course. Certainly, Mr. Williams. I have the file right here. Premier Motors, 1247 Riverside Drive, purchased by Williams Automotive Group for $12.3 million. Acquisition completed June 1st. Is there a problem with the transition? David's eyes never left Marcus's face as he answered. There might be, Sarah. I'm at the dealership right now, and I've just experienced what I can only describe as systematic racial discrimination from the general manager, Marcus Thompson. The behavior has been recorded by multiple witnesses and appears to violate both company policy and federal anti-discrimination laws. The silence in the showroom was so complete that you could have heard a pin drop. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face as the pieces fell into devastating place. Williams Automotive Group. David Williams. The mysterious new owner he never met, never seen, never imagined could be the casually dressed man he just spent 20 minutes humiliating. Oh my God! Someone whispered from across the showroom. Mr. Williams? Sarah's voice came through the speaker, professional but clearly concerned. Do you need me to contact our HR department immediately? Should I dispatch security to assist you? HR would be helpful, Sarah. Also, please have our IT department pull all surveillance footage from this location for the past hour. I believe we'll need it for documentation purposes. And Sarah? You might want to prepare termination paperwork for the general manager position. Marcus stumbled backward, his legs suddenly unable to support his weight. He caught himself against a nearby Mercedes, his hands shaking uncontrollably. Around the showroom, staff members were staring in shock, customers were backing away as if from a crime scene, and phones continued recording every moment. You! Marcus's voice cracked like a teenager's. You're David Williams? The David Williams? David ended the call and slipped his phone back into his pocket. When he looked at Marcus again, the humble customer in worn jeans was gone. In his place stood a man who commanded boardrooms across 6 states, who had built a business empire from nothing, who employed over 2,400 people, and who now held Marcus's entire career in his hands. Mr. Thompson, David said, his voice now carrying the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. I am David Williams, founder and CEO of Williams Automotive Group. As of 14 days ago, I am the owner of this dealership. I am, in the most literal sense, your boss. I came here today to observe how my new employees treat customers. What I witnessed was textbook discrimination. Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, no sound emerging. His mind was racing through the past 20 minutes, reviewing every word he'd said, every assumption he'd made, every bridge he'd burned. The magnitude of his mistake was crushing, literally bringing him to his knees. "Mr. Williams," Marcus finally managed to whisper. I didn't know. I mean, if I had known who you were. If you had known who I was, you would have treated me differently," David interrupted. "That's exactly the problem, Mr. Thompson. You didn't treat me badly because of who I am, you treated me badly because of who you assumed I was. Based on my clothes. Based on my appearance. Based on your prejudices about what successful people are supposed to look like." Marcus tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. "Please, Mr. Williams. I have a family. A mortgage. 2 kids in college. I made a mistake, but I can learn. I can change. I can do better. You made a series of choices," David corrected, his voice carrying the weight of judgment. "This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, this was systematic discrimination. You revealed your true character, Mr. Thompson. You showed me exactly who you are when you think no one important is watching." The young salesman, Jenkins, stepped forward cautiously. "Mr. Williams, sir, if I may, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Marcus has, well, there have been complaints from customers before." David nodded grimly. "We'll be reviewing all customer complaints from the past year, Mr. Jenkins. We'll also be conducting individual interviews with every staff member to understand the culture that's been allowed to develop here." Marcus looked around desperately, seeking any ally, any support, any way to salvage his situation. But his staff members were avoiding eye contact, customers were recording his humiliation, and his world was crumbling around him in real time. "Please," Marcus begged, his voice breaking. "I'll do anything. Sensitivity training. Community service. A formal apology. Please don't destroy my life over this." David's expression didn't soften. "Mr. Thompson, you've spent the last 20 minutes trying to destroy my dignity based on the color of my skin and the clothes I wear. You've revealed that you've been running this dealership with discriminatory practices that have likely cost us hundreds of thousands and lost business. You've created a toxic environment where employees are afraid to speak up and customers are judged by their appearance rather than treated with respect." Within minutes, the showroom was filling with people. David's corporate team began arriving, HR representatives with briefcases, legal advisors with recording equipment, and security personnel to ensure order. Marcus watched in horror as his domain was invaded by the very people he should have been working to impress. "Mr. Thompson," David announced loudly enough for everyone to hear, "you are terminated from your position as General Manager of Premier Motors, effective immediately. Please surrender your keys, company credit cards, access badges, and any other dealership property to our security team." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. 15 years of building his career, gone in an instant. His reputation in the industry, destroyed. His financial security, evaporated. All because he couldn't see past his own prejudices to recognize that respect should be given to every human being, regardless of appearance. As Marcus was escorted from the building by security, David turned to address the remaining staff members who had gathered in stunned silence. "Let me be absolutely clear about something," David said, his voice carrying throughout the showroom. "Discrimination of any kind, racial, economic, social, or otherwise, will not be tolerated in any Williams Automotive Group facility. Every customer who walks through those doors deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of how they look, what they drive, what they wear, or what assumptions you might make about their financial capacity." The transformation of the showroom atmosphere was immediate and dramatic. Where 20 minutes earlier there had been whispered conversations and judgmental glances, now there was electric tension and barely contained excitement. Staff members who had been complicit in Marcus's discriminatory practices through their silence were now scrambling to distance themselves from their former manager's behavior. Jenkins, the young salesman who had tried to intervene, stepped forward with obvious nervousness but clear determination. "Mr. Williams, sir, I want you to know that not everyone here agreed with Marcus's methods. Several of us have tried to treat all customers fairly, but Marcus made it clear that our jobs depended on following his lead." David studied the young man's face, seeing sincerity and moral courage that had been suppressed under Marcus's leadership. "What's your full name, son?" "Michael Jenkins, sir. I've been here 6 months. I came from a smaller dealership where we treated everyone with respect, and I've been struggling with the culture here." "Tell me about the culture, Michael." Jenkins glanced around nervously at his coworkers, then seemed to make a decision. "Marcus taught us to do what he called customer profiling. Within 30 seconds of someone walking in, we were supposed to categorize them as either qualified buyers or tire kickers. The qualified buyers got the full treatment coffee, detailed presentations, test drives, whatever they wanted. The tire kickers got, well, what you just experienced." David nodded grimly. "How did you determine who was qualified?" "Clothes, jewelry, shoes, cars they arrived in." Marcus said he could tell someone's credit score just by looking at them. Jenkins's voice grew stronger as he continued. "But sir, I've seen so many good people treated badly. A woman last month who looked like a school teacher turned out she was a retired executive wanting to buy a car for her grandson's graduation. Marcus barely spoke to her, so she left and bought a Mercedes from our competitor instead. Cost us a $40,000 sale." The blonde receptionist, clearly trying to save her job, interrupted. "Mr. Williams, I want you to know that I always tried to be polite to everyone who came in." David turned his attention to her. "What's your name?" "Amanda Richardson, sir. I've worked here for 2 years. Amanda, when I walked in today, you and your colleague immediately started whispering and pointing. You giggled when Marcus questioned my ability to afford a car. Is that your idea of being polite to everyone?" Amanda's face went red. I was just... Marcus trained us to alert him when certain types of people came in." "What types of people?" The question hung in the air like a sword. Amanda realized she was trapped, unable to articulate Marcus's discriminatory policies without revealing her own participation in them. David's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it and announced, "Our HR team will be here in 10 minutes. They'll be conducting individual interviews with every employee to understand exactly how this dealership has been operating. I suggest you all think carefully about what you're going to tell them." The next few minutes were filled with nervous whispers and frantic phone calls as employees tried to figure out how to distance themselves from Marcus's practices without admitting their own complicity. But David's attention was focused on the broader implications of what he'd discovered. "Michael," David said, "I want you to compile a list of every customer complaint from the past year. Every incident where someone felt they were treated poorly or unfairly. I want names, dates, and detailed accounts of what happened." "Yes, sir. But Mr. Williams, I should tell you Marcus instructed us not to document certain types of complaints. He said they were just people trying to cause trouble." David's jaw tightened. "We'll be recovering all electronic communications, reviewing all security footage, and conducting a complete audit of this dealership's practices. If systematic discrimination has been happening here, we'll find it." The HR team arrived exactly on schedule, 3 professionals in business suits carrying briefcases and tablets. David met them at the entrance and spoke quietly for several minutes, gesturing toward different areas of the showroom and various employees. "Ladies and gentlemen," David announced, "these are representatives from our corporate HR department. They'll be conducting individual interviews with each of you over the next few hours. I want complete honesty about how this dealership has been operating. Anyone who has participated in discriminatory practices but is willing to acknowledge their mistakes and commit to change will be given an opportunity to make things right. Anyone who continues to deny or minimize what's been happening here will be terminated." The message was clear. Confession and reform offered a path to redemption, but denial guaranteed destruction. Amanda Richardson raised her hand tentatively. Mr. Williams, what's going to happen to the dealership? Are you going to close it? David considered the question. Premier Motors will remain open, but under completely new management and with a totally transformed culture. This dealership is going to become a model for how customers should be treated, regardless of their appearance or perceived financial status. He paused, looking around the showroom at the faces of employees who were just beginning to understand the magnitude of change that was coming. Let me tell you something about my philosophy, David continued, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. I didn't get where I am by discriminating against people or judging them by their appearance. I got here by recognizing that every person who walks through our doors is a potential customer, a human being deserving of respect, and possibly someone whose story I don't know yet. He gestured toward the luxury vehicles surrounding them. These cars are beautiful, but they're just metal and leather and electronics. What makes a dealership successful isn't the cars, it's how we treat the people who come to see them. And what I witnessed here today was a complete failure in that regard. David's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID and answered immediately. Yes, Sarah? Mr. Williams, I've pulled the customer satisfaction surveys for Premier Motors over the past 18 months. The numbers are concerning. Multiple complaints about discriminatory treatment, with several customers specifically mentioning the general manager by name. How many complaints? 17 documented cases in the past year alone. And sir, I've cross-referenced these with sales data. We can track at least 12 instances where customers left without purchasing and bought comparable vehicles from competitors within a week. That's approximately $480,000 in lost revenue that we can directly trace to discrimination. David closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the revelation. Nearly $500,000 in lost business because Marcus Thompson couldn't see past his prejudices. Sarah, I want you to contact every single one of those customers personally. Apologize on behalf of the company, invite them back for a proper shopping experience, and offer them significant incentives to give us another chance. Already working on it, sir. I should also mention that news of this incident is starting to spread on social media. Several people recorded video, and it's being shared rapidly. David wasn't surprised. In today's connected world, incidents like this could go viral within hours. Monitor the situation closely. Prepare a statement about our zero-tolerance policy for discrimination and our commitment to treating all customers with respect. As David ended the call, he noticed that several customers who had witnessed the confrontation were still in the showroom, apparently reluctant to leave. An elderly African-American gentleman in an expensive suit approached him. Excuse me, Mr. Williams? I'm Dr. Robert Hayes. I witnessed what happened here, and I wanted to thank you. David shook the man's hand. Thank me? For standing up to that treatment with such dignity. For not letting that man's ignorance turn you into something you're not. And for using your position to make real change instead of just seeking revenge. Dr. Hayes paused, then continued. I'm a retired surgeon, and I've experienced that kind of treatment more times than I care to count. Usually, there's no justice, no consequence. People like that manager just keep treating people badly because they never face any real accountability. Dr. Hayes, I appreciate your words, but I don't deserve credit for doing what should be basic human decency. That's exactly why you do deserve credit, Dr. Hayes replied. Because you see treating people with respect as basic decency, not as something extraordinary. David found himself thinking about the ripple effects of Marcus's behavior. How many potential customers had been driven away over the years? How many employees had learned to discriminate by following Marcus's example? How many people had left this building feeling humiliated and devalued? Mr. Williams? Jenkins approached again, holding a tablet. I've started compiling that list you requested. Just from my 6 months here, I can document 8 clear cases of discriminatory treatment. There are probably many more that I didn't witness directly. David took the tablet and scrolled through Jenkins's notes. Each entry represented a human being who had been judged, dismissed, and mistreated based on appearance rather than treated as a valued potential customer. Case 1, Hispanic woman, approximately 30, well-dressed but driving older car. Marcus refused to let her test drive without co-signer present. She left, purchased Lexus from competitor same week. Case 2, young black man, college age, asking about entry-level vehicles. Marcus told him financing would be very difficult without checking credit. Customer had 780 credit score and full-time job. Case 3, elderly white woman, casual clothes, asked about cars for granddaughter. Marcus assigned newest salesperson, limited time spent. Customer bought 2 cars from competitor, one for granddaughter, one for herself. The list went on, each entry a testament to the systematic discrimination that had infected this dealership under Marcus's leadership. Michael, David said, I want you to expand this to cover the entire time Marcus has been general manager. Talk to other staff members, review customer complaint files, check social media reviews. I want a complete picture of what's been happening here. Yes, sir. Mr. Williams, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you just reveal who you were immediately? You could have avoided all of that treatment. David considered the question. Because if I had identified myself as the owner, Marcus would have treated me completely differently. I would never have seen his true character, never understood the toxic culture he'd created here. The only way to see the real problem was to experience it as an ordinary customer would. That took a lot of courage, sir. No, Michael. What took courage was you trying to intervene when you saw Marcus treating me badly, even though you knew it could cost you your job. That's the kind of moral courage I want to see from all our employees. Jenkins straightened, clearly taking the praise to heart. Mr. Williams, if I may, I'd like to be part of the solution here. I want to help rebuild this place into something better. I'm counting on it, Michael. In fact, I'm promoting you to interim general manager, effective immediately. The announcement rippled through the showroom. Several employees looked shocked that someone so junior would be elevated to such a position, but David's reasoning was sound. Jenkins had demonstrated integrity when it mattered most. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll work harder than you've ever worked to create a culture where every customer is treated with dignity and respect. Say you'll hire people based on their character and their commitment to service, not their willingness to discriminate. Say you'll make this dealership a place where anyone can walk in and be treated like they matter. I promise, Mr. Williams. I won't let you down. The transformation of Premier Motors began immediately. Within 2 hours of Marcus's termination, David's corporate team had implemented emergency protocols to address the discrimination crisis. HR representatives conducted private interviews with every employee, creating detailed records of the dealership's toxic culture and identifying staff members who had either participated in or been complicit with discriminatory practices. The results were sobering. Of the 12 sales staff members, 7 admitted to following Marcus's customer profiling system. 3 claimed they had been uncomfortable with the practices but feared for their jobs if they objected. Only Jenkins and one other salesperson, Maria Santos, had actively tried to treat all customers fairly despite Marcus's policies. Amanda Richardson, the receptionist who had giggled at David's expense, broke down during her interview. I know it was wrong, she sobbed to the HR representative. But Marcus made it clear that our jobs depended on supporting his system. He said customers who didn't fit the profile were just wasting everyone's time and hurting our sales numbers. David listened to the interview recordings with a mixture of sadness and determination. These employees weren't inherently evil people, they were individuals who had been corrupted by a toxic leadership culture that rewarded discrimination and punished moral courage. We're going to give everyone a choice, David announced to his HR team. Full disclosure about their participation in discriminatory practices, sincere commitment to change, and completion of comprehensive sensitivity training or termination. No middle ground. By the end of the day, 5 employees had chosen termination rather than admit their mistakes and commit to reform. 7 others, including Amanda, had tearfully confessed their complicity and begged for another chance. David, remembering his own experiences with second chances, decided to offer redemption to those willing to earn it. The real work began immediately. David brought in Dr. Patricia Williams, no relation, a nationally recognized expert in workplace discrimination and cultural transformation. Dr. Williams spent 3 days at Premier Motors, conducting workshops, individual counseling sessions, and developing a comprehensive reform program. The culture change has to be total, Dr. Williams explained to David and his team. It's not enough to just tell people to stop discriminating. You have to help them understand why discrimination is wrong, how it hurts everyone involved, and what positive behavior looks like in practice. The training program she developed was intensive: 40 hours of classroom instruction, role-playing exercises, cultural sensitivity workshops, and ongoing mentoring. Every employee had to complete the program successfully or face termination. But David's commitment to change went far beyond training. He implemented new policies that revolutionized how Premier Motors operated. The Dignity First policy: every customer, regardless of appearance, would be greeted within 30 seconds of entering the showroom, offered refreshments, and assigned a dedicated sales representative for as long as they wished to browse. The no profiling rule: any employee caught making assumptions about customers based on appearance would face immediate disciplinary action, up to and including termination. The Second Chance Initiative: David personally contacted every customer who had filed discrimination complaints over the past 2 years, apologizing on behalf of the company and inviting them back for a completely different experience. The Community Investment Program: Premier Motors would sponsor local community events, particularly in underserved neighborhoods, to demonstrate genuine commitment to serving all members of the community. The story of David's confrontation with Marcus had indeed gone viral on social media, but not in the way Marcus might have feared for the company. Instead of negative publicity, the incident generated widespread praise for David's dignity in the face of discrimination and his commitment to creating real change. #JusticeServed began trending on Twitter, with thousands of people sharing their own stories of retail discrimination and praising David for using his power to address the problem rather than simply seeking revenge. Local news stations picked up the story, interviewing Dr. Hayes and other witnesses who had been in the showroom. The coverage was overwhelmingly positive, focusing on David's grace under pressure and his comprehensive approach to cultural reform. "This is how real change happens," Dr. Hayes told Channel 7 News. "Not through lawsuits or boycotts, but through leadership that insists on treating everyone with dignity." 3 months after the incident, Premier Motors had been completely transformed. Jenkins, now the permanent general manager, had hired 5 new sales staff members, all of them specifically chosen for their commitment to treating customers fairly regardless of appearance. Customer satisfaction scores had skyrocketed from 2.1 out of 5 to 4.8 out of 5. Sales had increased by 40% as word spread through the community that Premier Motors had become a place where everyone was welcome. The dealership that had once driven customers away through discrimination now attracted buyers from across the city who wanted to support a business that embodied their values. Marcus Thompson's fate was less fortunate, but entirely self-inflicted. Word of his termination for discrimination spread quickly through the automotive industry. Despite his 15 years of experience, no reputable dealership would hire him. He eventually found work at a small used car lot on the outskirts of town, earning a fraction of his former salary, and facing the daily reality that his prejudices had destroyed the career he'd spent years building. But the most powerful transformation was in the employees who had chosen redemption over termination. Amanda Richardson, the receptionist who had giggled at David's expense, became one of the dealership's most passionate advocates for respectful customer service. "I was so ashamed of who I had become," she told David during a 6-month review meeting. "I grew up being taught that everyone deserves respect, but somewhere along the way, I let Marcus's attitudes poison my thinking. This experience saved me from becoming someone I would have hated." Maria Santos, the salesperson who had maintained her integrity throughout Marcus's reign, was promoted to sales manager and tasked with training new hires in the Premier Motors way, a customer service philosophy built around dignity, respect, and the understanding that you never know someone's full story by looking at them. David continued his practice of visiting his dealerships incognito, but now it served a different purpose. Instead of investigating discrimination, he was celebrating transformation. Premier Motors had become a model for the entire Williams Automotive Group network, demonstrating that businesses could be both profitable and principled. 6 months after the confrontation, David received a letter that moved him to tears. "Dear Mr. Williams, you don't know me, but I was in your showroom the day you confronted that manager. I'm a teacher, and I had saved for 3 years to buy my first new car. When I walked into Premier Motors, I was treated so badly that I left without even looking at vehicles. I felt humiliated and angry. But after seeing how you handled that situation, and reading about the changes you made, I decided to give Premier Motors another chance. Last week, I bought a beautiful new car from Michael Jenkins and his team. They treated me like the most important customer they'd ever had. More importantly, I've been telling this story to my students. They're learning that standing up to discrimination takes courage, that real leadership means using your power to help others, and that change is possible when people commit to doing better. Thank you for showing my students and me what integrity looks like in action. Respectfully, Mrs. Jennifer Adams, Roosevelt Elementary School." David kept that letter framed in his office, a daily reminder that individual actions can create ripples of change that extend far beyond their immediate circumstances. The story of Premier Motors became legendary within Williams Automotive Group, told to new employees as an example of the company's values and commitment to treating all people with dignity. It demonstrated that discrimination wasn't just morally wrong, it was bad business that cost money, damaged reputations, and corrupted the souls of everyone who participated in it. But perhaps the most important lesson was simpler, that you never know who you're talking to when you meet a stranger. The person you dismiss might be the person who determines your future. The customer you judge by their appearance might be the owner of everything around you. David Williams had proven that justice, when it finally arrives, can be as swift and complete as a thunderstorm. And sometimes, that justice comes dressed in old jeans and worn sneakers, carrying the power to change everything while asking only for basic human respect in return. Marcus Thompson had learned too late that in America, success doesn't always look the way you expect it to. And David Williams had demonstrated that true power isn't about dominating others, it's about lifting them up and creating a world where everyone is treated with the dignity they deserve. The lesson echoed far beyond one showroom floor: never judge someone by their appearance. Respect costs nothing but means everything. Treat people well not because of who they might be, but because of who you choose to be. And remember that in the end, what goes around always comes around, sometimes wearing the most unexpected disguise. The next time you're tempted to judge someone by how they look, remember Marcus Thompson's story. Remember that the person you dismiss today might be the person who determines your tomorrow. Treat everyone with dignity, kindness, and respect, not because they might be powerful, but because every human being deserves to be treated as if they matter. Because they do. If you are moved by this story that we should stop judging books by their covers, join the We Are Black family. Subscribe and become part of the conversation that's changing everything. Stories like this happen every day. Subscribe to We Are Black and stay informed about what's really happening in our communities.